Welcome to the A-Dub Club, a podcast about sci-fi, fantasy, technology, pop culture, the internet, and general nerdery. There are three things that are important to know. One, we occasionally use swear words, but try to stay in the range of PG-13, or at least the kind of R that cool parents are fine with. Two, we may talk spoilers. In this particular episode, we just discuss some of the context around the artists of things like Ender's Game or Rosemary's Baby, but we don't actually really talk about the art itself, so I guess no real spoilers. That said, we do talk about some shitty, abusive stuff done by shitty people, though not in any particularly graphic detail, but still, if you're sensitive to that, be aware. And three, finally, most importantly, Disneyland California is the one Disney park that doesn't serve alcohol if you ignore the exclusive Club 33, which I really want to go to someday. With that out of the way, welcome to the clubhouse. We have snacks.
Hello and welcome to the A-Dub Club. I'm Alex Wade.
And I'm Andrew Whipple.
And we are awesome.
There you go. See?
We found a third thing.
We found a third thing, and then that's all it's going. How you doing, Alex Wade?
I'm doing good. Life's jazzy.
Jazzy, that's fun. Yeah,
it is.
What style of music is my life like right now? I would say it's like elevator music. I don't know what the adjective form of elevator music is, but that's what I'm going with.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. Banal?
Banal, sure. Yeah, we'll roll with that. It's been a while. Elephant in the room. Summer's hard. People got shit to do. People also just forget that they host a podcast. Cough me. But
me too.
You know, that happens. But we're back.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
Our topic for today is less nerdy in general and more about art and the consumption of art in regards to artists.
So we're going to try and talk about an interesting question, something that we've been pondering for a while, but seems like every gosh dang month comes up again and again. And that's, can you like good art from shitty people?
Yeah, it's a tough question. It's full of moral quandaries and capitalistic intentions and bad people.
Yeah. And to give a caveat, in case you don't know us personally and don't realize that we are exceptionally white.
Yes, sir.
And we are not typically the ones harmed by the shitty people that do the shitty things. So your mileage may vary, and we certainly don't discount anyone else's experience. And we also don't discount if you're like, do I want to listen to two white guys talk about that? We think we're interesting, but I don't know. Your call. You do what you want to do. And no tea, no shade, no pink lemonade.
Remember, our opinions are fact and law, and that's all there is to it, really.
Yeah, that's also true. It's thorny. I don't know. It's a big question. It's a big question to think about it.
Yeah, I think one of the first things we should talk about is just kind of the history of art and artists of past art. So I think consumption of past art is something that is should be highly encouraged, and something that should be taken kind of irrespective of the actual artists themselves. There are some very bad people who made some beautiful art for today. I was not an art historian or a history major or whatever, but I know that there were a lot of shitty artists.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess maybe that's a good also like starting ground to, I think we're on the same page. And I think most people listening are probably on the same page that it is totally possible for really good art to be made by really shitty people. That like as a given bedrock, that is a thing that exists. I think that is interesting to think about, like in the past, what do you do with older works of art that are, as much as anything, being called objectively good because subjectivity, blah, 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 whatever. But if it's made by someone that's bad, someone that did some shitty things, someone that is per the standards of how we work today, not living up to the good stuff.
No.
Knock off all the racists from all of history.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a different time. It was a different sense of being.
One thing that always comes up with all of this is that like getting to enjoy good art is awesome, and like it's really good to get to that's a pleasure in life that like I would feel weird ever trying to deny from someone of like, plenty of Voltaire, I think, was a virulent racist. I'm pretty sure. I might be getting that wrong, but there was some bad shit that Voltaire did. Candide is like interesting, and like the experience of getting to read Candide and the experience of getting to understand some of the works is like something that I would recommend to people and has been beneficial on my own life. So like, yeah, I would feel weird about doing any sort of removal of whatever joy and whatever learnings that can come out of a piece of art by virtue of it being tainted by a shitty creator.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I really enjoy some of Hitler's art.
Okay.
It's okay. It's pleasant.
I'm going to, for your own sake, assume that you were talking about the paintings and
yes.
the
what did you think I was talking about?
Well, to be clear, he did also have a lot of writings and a lot of things that books that were published that featured.
I wouldn't consider that art.
Some less. Okay. Good. That's good. Just so we're on the same page. Theory. I haven't seen too many of his paintings, so I actually can't comment one way or another.
I mean,
I've heard that they're like
pretty
middle of the road.
Yeah,
like don't quit your day job of being a monster to go be an artist.
Oh boy.
I do think though this is a little bit separate from purely like, can you enjoy or can you participate in older works of art by shitty people, but by and large, hand in hand, that tends to go along with like lionization and canonization of artists, and often at the expense of other artists that may not have been as shitty, but were not throughout history seen as being as popular. Of like, it's one thing to say, again, I don't actually remember if Voltaire was a racist, but for the sake of argument, assuming that he is, assuming everyone was racist back then, one thing to say Voltaire was a racist who wrote some really good stuff, and another thing to say Voltaire is one of the greatest thinkers of history, and to ignore the past or to push him up above maybe some other thinkers that have been marginalized throughout history.
Sure.
Anyone can enjoy a work of art and should be able to take enjoyment and take learnings from that. But figuring out the right way to balance, like, there's only so many books that you can teach in a history class. How many of them should be by the good works that were written by racists versus the good works that were written not by racists? And I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I think it's valuable to read. Also, I do think it's valuable to read the art or political theory by these people to understand like what's wrong with it, and to like, I have not read the Little Red Book or Mein Kampf, but I can understand that there's value in comprehending why these were powerful tools of the time. And as such, that would require reading them, you know?
Yeah, I think the one thing that gives me the sticking point is the fact that like so much art is always being created and has always been created, and so little of it seems to float to the top of being the like big important stuff. And also, like, I'm sure historically speaking, like, there's probably a reason why it's not that only white men were writing good books, it's that only people were teaching and saying you should be reading the good books written by the white men.
Yeah. I guess I feel like we pretty covered, you know, the past art of dead artists.
Yeah, I think maybe my one thing that I do want to like put a button on, which I think we're both in agreement, especially what you were talking about the second time you talked about Hitler, with contextualization, I think is super important. It's like with the Little Red Book and Mein Kampf example of, it's irresponsible and not great to just say, hey, just read this.
Yeah.
What is great, though, is, hey, read this. Let's discuss it. Let's think about the problematic nature of it. Let's work through how it fits into the context of history, how it provided, you know, had what inspired it, what did it inspire, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And all that goodness.
I mean, even beyond that, if you can compliment the book for some aspects of it, of like, I don't really know what Mein Kampf, what's in it, but I'm sure you could.
Yeah, let's not go down the rabbit hole of doing a literary critique of Mein Kampf.
Sure, yeah. I'm gonna imaginary put some attributes to the book of like, ooh, it was really it caught fire to the populace because it riled people up for whatever reason. That's very vague.
It's flying off the shelves.
Very vague. But you get the point, right?
Sure. Okay.
You can say these things about it that are like complimentary in a sense. Like what's the number one like compliment of, again, you know what? I'm going to stop talking about Mein Kampf and Hitler.
Yeah. We get the point. I think, okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think context when it comes to dealing with historical stuff. Context, and also like it's something that I struggle with, but like, I don't know, trying to broaden your horizons as much as is possible.
Yeah.
And, see what's the stuff that has been hidden from you but might be super good.
Yeah. Okay, so dead people aside, and the morality of reading that literature or experiencing that art, I think we should move on now to more current times of like people who are still alive and enjoying. Let's start with enjoying their past art.
Okay.
So my favorite book is Ender's Game. I've read it 15 times.
I'm glad that you brought it up. Because I was going to bring that up. That was going to be my first example too.
Yeah, I've read it maybe 15 times, and it's always like if I need a touchstone on my life, I go back and I reread it, and every time I reread it, I notice something new about the book. I notice something new about my own life, and it's been a really great book for me in my life. That being said, Orson Scott Card is a huge anti-Semitic and awful person. I'm pretty sure he has some pretty other awful aspects of his personality too.
Yeah, I think what I remember hearing about is that he's pretty virulently anti-LGBT. That was, or at least that was the stuff that I was aware of.
Yeah, I was mainly about the end. Whatever, he's a bad person. So I have the book, and I will still reread it. And like my first instinct is like to not feel bad about that and not feel guilty about enjoying this piece of art. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different angles to take on it. One, similar to what we were talking about with stuff in the past, of like, how much do you contribute to the notion of the like celebrity that goes along with being a author that people like or an artist that people like, and how much does you enjoying a piece of art contribute to that notion of celebrity? The one thing that is unique to the example of Orson Scott Card or any other still living artist is that there's the capitalism and the money aspect of it actively putting dollars into someone's pocketbook.
Who also donates to campaigns, and also specifically Orson Scott Card does that. So he is heavily anti-LGBTQ, and he pushes for that agenda in the politics.
Yeah.
So giving him money is a direct detriment to society in that regards.
Yeah. God, no, because I remember this, it was in high school, I think. This was the first time that I like actually thought and reckoned with the idea of good art from shitty people, was realizing Ender's Game, this book that I found in middle school that I loved, that I wouldn't call it my favorite book now, but certainly for a period of time in like middle school was, and then realizing, oh, the author of this book that I love so much is very opposed to the beliefs that I have and actively using the money from these books to pursue political agendas that I find abhorrent. And yeah, I mean, that's, candidly speaking, that's something that I still, 8 years later, don't have a clear-cut answer to how I should feel about that.
I think for art that you're gonna like, or that I think there's a certain amount of value that it provides for you in your own life that you have to weigh and measure against however much that's going to help or impact society. So like spending $20 on a book, if I lose my copy, like that might be, I think in the scheme of it all, I would feel okay doing that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Here,
I think maybe what might help is to like, again, realistically speaking, I don't think that we're going to get to like a clear-cut defined answer. And even if we did come to a clear-cut defined answer, it'd be the clear-cut defined answer from two privileged white guys that probably wouldn't be relevant to everyone else's circumstance. So this is one of those ones, like some like the internet platforms episode, it was like, we're going to get to something messy by the end of it.
Yeah.
But I still think that there could be value in like breaking it down into smaller chunks.
Yeah.
So how about the sub question? And let's talk about Ender's Game again as an example. What do you think and what are your feelings about like going back, rereading, re-enjoying Ender's Game? Something that you've already read before, you've already purchased. He's a shitty author, but I'm going to go back and read it again.
I feel I would do that. I'm going to do that. I'm looking around my room right now and I don't see my copy of Ender's Game. So that might be something I actually been wanting to reread it. I might do that soon.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I mostly feel the same way. And I think, I mean, part of that is that it removes the like capitalism side of things. Like you're not paying any money and I guess.
And there's also a certain amount of well, I forget what the phrase is, but there's like it's something like there's no ethical spending in capitalistic societies.
Yeah.
Right. So like
so I guess so this is going to get to what my second question was, is that like, how would you feel about either the circumstance of, like you said, oh, I lost my copy, I want to read it again, let me go out and buy it, or, oh, there's a new book in the series that came out, or the movie for Ender's Game just came out, or something like that. I actually, that's what, because it was the Ender's Game movie was what gave me the renewed sense of conundrum about, hey, what's the ethical move here?
Yeah, a shitty movie, by the way. Except the battle scene room. Oh my god, amazing! That
very quickly removed the ethical conundrum when I saw the first reviews and the trailer for all intents and purposes, and was like, "Oh, good, it's shitty. I just don't even have to care.
That's good.
I can ignore this."
Yeah.
But imagine if it was a great movie.
That'd be. It's hard to. I think that the amount. It's really hard to, because the amount of impact you as an individual have isn't that great, but also that is something that's not really a good excuse.
Yeah.
But there's only, I don't want to say there's only so much you can do, because that feels like just kind of throwing in the towel, being like, oh, what are we going to do with life?
Yeah.
My decisions mean nothing. That means I can go and do whatever I want. That seems like shirking responsibility.
Yeah. And I mean, it does go against the fact that like, even if your ticket, your $15 ticket sale eventually turns into like a $2 that makes their way to Orson Scott Card or whatever it is, that's $2 more than he would have had otherwise.
Yeah.
And it's small, but it's not nothing.
It's part of every decision you make to buy anything. Like,
I
have an Amazon account, and that's, to get, we're both hugely liberal. So that's, causing issues with all of their, not factories, all of their warehouses with their shitty pay and all the horrible working conditions there. So that's awful. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to not have Amazon.
Yeah. God, yeah, I don't know. The two arguments being the like, one, in the grand scheme of things, what does it matter if it's a couple extra dollars that from any individual? How much power do they have? I think in and of itself that isn't a very satisfying argument, because for all the reasons that you said before. The one thing that kind of can work well with is if you say, okay, this is the harm I'm doing. I'm doing $2 of harm, say. What is the good that's coming out of me potentially experiencing this piece of art? And does that outweigh the $2 of harm to someone shitty? And that becomes a really sticky thing, because it's much less quantifiable, and it all depends on like how good actually is the art, and does the art like promote things that, that's the other thing about Ender's Game in particular, is that like the book Ender's Game espouses values and virtues and like teaches lessons that are so counter to the things that Orson Scott Card professes to believe and spends his money on.
Fascinating.
Like, it is a book all about tolerance and like it is a book about empathy. That's the entire purpose of like his superpower and stuff like that, is that he's an empathetic
That's why
person.
he was so good at doing what he did. That's what he attributes it to, the main character Ender. There is also, you were saying about how it's determining how much value you are getting out of it. That's also like a very self-centered, selfish way of looking at it. And I don't really know if there's another way that it can be looked at. Because that's,
one way of flipping that, though, that could be interesting, which is the other, like, this is a legit question that I've had myself and don't necessarily know the answer to. Ender's Game, should you recommend it to people and tell other people, hey, you should read Ender's Game?
I mean, personally, because I value it so much that I think that it really does espouse great values and is a great story and taught me a lot and made me who I am in a lot of different ways. I think that I think it has enough value artistically to offset any possible gains that could be made on Orson Scott Card's part.
Yeah.
So yes, I would in this specific case, because I think it's a very obvious trade-off. The positive impact, I think, is a lot greater than the negative impact in this case. But but I don't really know if there was another situation of like, it's like, what if there was like just an okay book that was decent and I enjoyed it and I would recommend it normally, and then introduced in that it's like, this guy's an awful person. He burns down forests for fun for some reason.
Yeah.
It's a very hard value decision to make. And the fact that the end result, the positivity that comes from it is usually personal and usually a gain for just you, I think makes it even harder, because you do want to be selfish and you're like, I don't really care if this guy kicked a puppy, or you don't want to be selfish and then you go too far in that direction. Like, we're having a conversation about the ethics of purchasing and giving $2 to someone, right? Maybe this is already a conversation too far. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. The Ender's Game, I'm glad that we talked about that, because that's I think for both of us, like a very formative example of like one of our favorite books and most influential books in our life.
Yeah.
Later. And that was also the interesting thing, is that this was an example of falling in love with something and then only later learning the problematic nature behind it.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know if I knew who Orson Scott Card was first and then was told, hey, here's this book, Ender's Game, by him, I may never have read it. And it's hard to say the counterfactuals of like, would that mean anything actually different for my life? Or is it just like a great book that I didn't read? Whatever. There's plenty that I haven't. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other example that I think about and wrestle with to this day and still have not 100%, I think I know where I'm going to land on it, is the movie Rosemary's Baby by Roman Polanski. Because I'm a huge horror fan. I love horror movies. I love horror movies. Rosemary's Baby is like a classic of horror film. Wildly, wildly influential and supposedly super, super good. Roman Polanski's also a monster and like actively avoiding justice and continuing to profit off of his legacy of financially successful and well-regarded films in order to live out a life where he's escaping justice for committing terrible crimes.
Yeah.
And like that fills me with weirdness of I will get a ton from watching a great and very influential horror movie, especially as someone who likes to know about like the history of horror and likes to think about like history of cinema and stuff like that. But to do so, I am, unless I pirate it, which I might, contributing some amount of money to Roman Polanski, who sucks, and also joining in this world of like, he is a celebrated filmmaker that made great works of art, but how much do you want to celebrate that when the person sucks?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think my short answer is I will eventually get around to seeing it. Also, there's a good chance, because I'm not really I try to be a little bit separate the art from the artist, but you take all of your baggage into any movie that you watch. I'm sure that will also color some of my reactions to the movie. The same way that like it does with Woody Allen, for instance. Woody Allen's easy, at least in my case, because every Woody Allen movie I've watched, I didn't like at all, even the best ones, because I think Woody Allen's a hack and doesn't actually make good movies. So that one's nice and easy to be able to write him off.
That's good.
I said that just in case like Matt Libby is listening to this and you can get really mad at me for my bad film opinions. But yeah, I said Woody Allen's a hack.
Yeah.
Fuck him.
I feel like there's an argument to be made about fish in the sea of like, there's always other options to consume. There's always more art. There's infinite amount of art, basically, and you can choose to go read something else or write.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But I don't really know how that's also a really tough thing to deal with. I think for past artists, especially, because if something is influential and did something and changed the way how a genre was written, then that is a valuable thing to study and watch for the art's sake. So it's not that there's necessarily, there's more art. It's like, no, there isn't. This was the formative thing. Like if Frankenstein was written by someone other than Mary, whatever. If Frankenstein,
Mary Shelley, who fucking rules. Mary Shelley is like the anti all of these shitty people. Lord Byron fucking sucked, but Mary Shelley rules. She's the anti Woody Allen in every way, including that she makes good things and Woody Allen sucks.
So if Woody Allen wrote Frankenstein, like that formed so much the basis of monster movies, period, that you kind of have to read that in order to study the genre. You can't escape that.
Yeah, I feel much more willing to make a carve out on the basis of something being influential than I do just on the basis of it being good. To be clear, there are certainly circumstances where like something is really good and like that might be enough to get me to interact with the art. But yeah, it being influential is again getting to that value judgment of like how shitty was the person, how valuable is the art. Influence is something that is a plus in the value column for me.
Absolutely. And I think that brings us to kind of more modern art, not old art, of like, so artists now, the difference between, I think, old good art that is influential is like new art. This whole new fish in the sea thing kind of applies of like, Kevin Spacey just came out with a new movie, Billionaires something. I'm not going to even finish the name. I'm not going to give him the advertising.
Sure.
But he came out with a new movie and I'm not going to go see it because there's so much other art for me to consume. And even though I really like Kevin Spacey as a actor and think I can learn from what he does, there are other people who I can learn from. There are other actors who I can appreciate that won't make me feel like a shithead.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also the like harms of capitalism side of the equation is even more pressing the more current something is, where like it's new and it matters if it makes money or not in this moment, more so than like the old stuff matters for older stuff.
Then they could make more money and they can use that money to keep doing shitty things.
Yeah, and it also gets into that weird notion of like, are we giving a tacit approval that to like, especially in the case of like the like a Kevin Spacey or something like that is, or actually also I think this was a big conversation happening around Casey Affleck and the Oscar nomination and win. Did he win for Manchester by the Sea? I know he was nominated, but a year or two ago of by rewarding this person for their acting, are we giving either a tacit endorsement of the abuse or at least a tacit, we don't care about that because it's balanced out by the artistic achievement.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the very least, it feels gross, even if it's not strictly speaking unethical. And it might also be actively unethical.
Yeah. I think it is unethical. I think it is like, for clear cut cases like Kevin Spacey, it is, it's like it is a tacit approval of what they're doing, of their actions. Saying, I don't really care about what you did. I'm still going to give you money.
Yeah. Oh, backdating all of this, allegedly in front of everything that we talked about people being shitty.
Sure.
Cool.
To go back to Nazis and
okay.
Yeah.
I said probably great that's going to be our through line for the episode. That's going to be our rule of threes.
Yeah. To go back to Nazis and Japanese scientists during World War II, they made incredible medical advancements, but we didn't give them awards for that, right? Like we didn't give a Nobel science, whatever the award would be for what did we discover, like penicillin during World War II or something?
No, but penicillin was different.
Whatever.
But
I know there was a lot of medical advancements due to Nazi torture and experimentation, as well as Japanese scientists and doctors. But we don't recognize them for those achievements. I mean, that's not true. We do recognize them for those. I also don't like the word achievement, but it is unfortunately applicable.
But yeah, I think that gets at that idea that we were talking about earlier about like you teach this stuff in context about like, you know, if you're in a film class and you're talking about how like, oh, Birth of a Nation, it was inception of all these great film technological achievements and way to use editing and stuff like that, and also caused this rebirth of the KKK. As long as you're teaching it in context, you're helping to get some of as much of the good that you can get out of, in that case, I guess it's not just good art made by a shitty person, because D.W. Griffith was a virulent racist. It's also shitty and problematic art created by a shitty person. But you're getting as much of the good out of it while trying to minimize the harm because you're placing it in context and highlighting the harm that comes out of it. And even turning some of the harm into a good as much as is possible by like history, learn your history so you don't repeat it.
Yeah, you have to. I think context is one of the most important things when talking about past things that aren't really affecting like current, climate stuff.
And also, I think that's arguably one of the problems with some of the current, like again, Casey Affleck with the Oscars, is that like the way that you can justify giving Casey Affleck an Oscar is by explicitly saying we're going to ignore the context around this. We're going to only focus on the acting in the movie. Whereas if you were thinking about the context, you would say, it'd be a very different thing if at the Oscar ceremony you were saying, hey, it's Casey Affleck. He did a great job in this movie. Also, he may have abused his wife. That would be a very different ceremony than, hey, isn't it great that he did a good acting job?
That'd be a very bold statement at his award ceremony.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I don't know if that's the right thing, but at the very least, it'd be more akin to the way that you should treat past shittiness.
So something that I'm curious about is there are obvious. So Casey Affleck, Kevin Spacey, obviously way over the line, very obvious bad people doing bad things, right?
Sure.
So my question now is drawing it back a little bit. So like people who have done like kind of shitty things, or people like, how does one come back into a society after doing something that's like kind of shitty? Because we are all human, and good people do bad things, and it's hard to figure out, I guess, that line. So like, for example, Aziz Ansari. He's a very interesting case in my head, because he's like on the line in a sense. Like he inappropriately pressured a woman into, well, I mean, I guess it didn't have sex with her, but, you know, tried to do that. And like, that story was an interesting story and like kind of bad, but it's definitely in a more grayer area than a lot of the current, I guess, Me Too outcomes.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm trying to give examples that that people today definitely have not necessarily strong opinions about, but like split opinions about, or close to split. Like Kevin Spacey, obviously bad.
Yeah.
But there are people who are like kind of in the more grayer area.
Relatively timely from another podcast that I listened to, a podcast called Do by Friday, which is great. I highly recommend it. It's probably my favorite podcast right now. They talked about an article that I ended up reading because they're talking about it from a few years back by this like philosopher person that wrote it, called "I Can Tolerate Anything But the Outgroup," I think. And in it, it talks about this idea that like what people see as forgiveness is very different. And a lot of what it comes down to is depending on, it's super easy for you to forgive something that you don't actually see as all that bad. And it's really hard for you to forgive something that you do see as an actual hurt and an actual harm done to you. And that counteracts with this idea that like, oh, we see forgiveness as a virtue, and we say, oh, can't you just go ahead and forgive? And I think in cases like the Aziz Ansari thing or Louis C.K. happening recently, as of when we're recording, coming back and doing a comedy show, that you're seeing a stark difference between the people who feel actively harmed by the stuff that Louis C.K. was doing, particularly like women in comedy feel actively harmed, and certainly the ones who had their careers actively harmed by Louis C.K. and Louis C.K.'s friends, allegedly. It's hard for them to forgive because they were actively hurt by it. You know who it's really easy to forgive? A bunch of white boy comedy fans that really like Louis C.K. and want to be able to go see Louis C.K. stuff. And it's sort of telling that a lot of the responses that are coming out from that are people saying, can't you just forgive? It's not like it was that bad. Well, that's sort of betraying your hand of saying like, this didn't actually hurt me, so it's super easy for me to forgive. And it's really not forgiveness. It's just me not caring.
That goes back to the issue of valuing art for, if the whole gain that's happening is personal and selfish in a sense, like it is not any other way, unfortunately.
In discussing this, there are, even if there isn't an answer, there, for me at least, is the shape starting to coalesce of a framework of how to think about this sort of stuff and how to make the case-by-case decisions of like, you know, value that you get out of the art personally versus the harm that you're doing monetarily to the person, to the rest of the world by giving money to someone, versus the influence that something has, versus the value of teaching it in a historical context. All of that sort of soup coming together to, fundamentally make that thing of like, art is good and art has actual importance in the world, and good art can do really cool things. And also there's a lot of shitty people in the world, and I think it's probably good not to support them all that much.
Well, that's the answer. We have decided it firmly.
Cool. We've got it. Laying down the law.
We have the definitive guide to, whether or not art is worthy of your opinion and money.
Yep.
And you heard it here first.
Okay. Actually, let's do maybe we'll cut this lightning round, but let's do a lightning round because I think there is one that we could do. Exclusively in the parameters of Ender's Game is what we'll talk about. Okay. So let's lightning round some of the stuff that we talked about earlier. Would you read Ender's Game again?
Yes.
Yes, same. Would you go out and buy a new copy of Ender's Game if you lost your copy?
Yes.
Yes, I don't actually own a copy, but whatever. If I would consider buying another one.
I would go to the library first, but yes.
Sure. If the Ender's Game movie was good and you knew that like he was getting money from it, would you go see the Ender's Game movie?
I have seen it, and I would not pay for it again because it's really shitty. If it was good,
sure.
I think I would, because it's too valuable for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would too. And would you recommend Ender's Game to a friend if they were like, "Oh, I want to find a new book to read"?
Again, yes. I think my answer to all these questions about Ender Game are going to be yes, because it's so important to me. So
Yeah,
bad example.
yeah, I think so. I would say yes. I would couch it in the context, and if I had a copy, I would lend them the copy before I would tell them to go buy one of their own.
Yeah, I would. I'd try to do the right thing and give as little money as possible to Orson Scott Card, but yeah.
All right. Anything else that we want to talk about on the light and cheery topic of the fact that so many powerful people in all of history and in the artistic world are monsters?
No.
Cool. Yeah. So this is the A-Dub Club. We're back, baby. You can find us. Oh, fuck. Where can you find us? You can find us on iTunes or Google Podcasts. I actually made sure that we are on Google Podcasts, which is good. Or wherever else you find your podcasts. You can find us at theadub.club. That's theadub.club. There you can also find there's only like 7 episodes, so it's relatively easy, but we do have a page that has all of the topics that we've talked about. If you click on one of those topics or one of those like books or things that we discussed, it'll take you to a list of all the episodes that we discussed that in. It's fun. Turns out Tumblr is really good at tagging things, so yay. And you can find us on Twitter at, I think, the AW Club, THEAW.CLUB. You need to start tweeting more, Alex Wade, and use our. I always forget that our Twitter exists, so we need to have both of us rarely tweet, and then it'll be twice as much rare tweeting. And I think that is all the places that we exist. Oh, you can also email us at, especially if you find our wishy-washiness on this topic bullshit, let us know via internet mail at theawclub@gmail.com, theawclub@gmail.com. Phew, I think that is.
Do we have any more
all of it.
spam emails?
Oh, do we? Let me double check. Loading. No spam here.
Aw,
Bummer.
damn.
See, this is why we need you all to email us, because we're not even getting spam anymore.
Aw.
But I think that is it. Is it not, Alex?
I think so. I guess with that, the A-Dub Club out.
A-Dub Club out. One second. And all right. Cool. Ready?
Great. Welcome. Welcome to the A-Dub Club.
Oh, okay. Ooh, do you want to take it this time?
Yeah, we're switching it up now.
Okay.
Welcome
Go for it.
to the A-Dub Club. Well, welcome to the A-Dub Club. I'm Alex Wade.
And I'm Andrew Whipple.
How life's been doing good. How about you, man?
See, it's your turn. See, coming up with a third thing. It's not as easy as it sounds. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Third thing. Oh shit. Yeah, I just forgot it. Oh fuck. Well, we're doing good. Life's
Yep.
Yeah, it's hard. You should you start these things. Why don't you ever start them, man? It's so hard to be the first one talking.
I do. I start them every time. Yeah, that's why I do that.
That never happens.
Yep. Fake news. Do we want to do that one again? That really got away from
awful.
You can go start it. I'm down with that. But yeah.
Okay. Restart. Take 2. 3, 2, 1.